And greetings everyone. This is the Soul Citizens and I am Griffin Gaming RPG and welcome back to another fun-filled week for Star Citizen. And this week we are really excited. We've been looking forward to this show. We've got some very special guests that are joining us. But before we get to them, I would like to introduce, of course, my co-host and my good friend, Mr. Fastcart. Fastcart, how are you? Say hello.
Hello, I'm fastcart, also known as FC. This is going to be an interesting one, folks, so stick around.
You know, I never call you FC. I think maybe I have to start calling you that because I call Kimmy the professor, so I'm going to have to go to FC now or something. It sounds important.
Hey, whatever you're comfortable with. I go FC because it's faster to type on a keyboard. It's 2 letters as opposed to 8.
Okay. All right, I'll give consideration to it then. All right, well, listen, let's get to our guests. We've got some very special people here. We've got an international guest. We were talking about this before the show. We've got a great group of people here. I want to introduce. Well, first of all, let's talk about the title of the show. The show this week is Role-Playing Organizations. And for those of you who have ever been into role-playing, I'm sure you have a certain passion and a heart for what that term means. And we're going to be analyzing what role-playing is, not only to each of these guests that are here today, but how it can be played out in Soul Citizen, in the Soul Citizen universe. If it can even be played out in the Soul Citizen universe is going to be another question. And I can't wait to hear what each of our guests say. So before we go to them, we're going to have a commercial because we want to show you how serious we are about role-playing. So check this out. And we will be right back and we'll introduce our guests.
Over 50 years ago, we set out to help Origin Jumpworks go farther. In that time, we learned things. A lot of things. With partners like Origin, we've gone farther than we ever could have imagined. Altama Hydrogen Plus. Where will it take you?
And that's right, folks. That was not a CIG trailer. I want you to know that was done by one of our guests on the show today, Altama Energy with Segellion and his folks put that together. So we're going to get to Segellion in a couple seconds. We're going to start at the far left in here and introduce our first guest, and that's going to be Captain Kidd. Captain Kidd, welcome to the show, and tell us a little bit about you, your organization, anything you want to share with us.
Well, thanks very much for inviting me onto the show, and I really enjoy your streams. I didn't know about you until just a couple of weeks ago, but I watched at least 2 or 3 of the streams that you sent me, and I was really impressed. It's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to fun and getting to know our other guests as well. So
thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. So let's see, the Piracy Brotherhood of Libertalia. So I became interested in Star Citizen in early 2016, and TPBL is the name of our pirate organization. And after a couple of months of playing, I decided I wanted to start my own org. And I really like playing the underdog. It's been my favorite RPG role all the way back to the mid 80s. So I did that, and I started the pirate organization, and then I got interested in testing. So I'm part of the PTU Wave 1 testing group, and I've been doing that for a couple of years, really enjoying it. I've invested a substantial amount of money in Star Citizen, like a lot of my friends I know. I've spent at least $3,000 on, I guess what you could call JPEG spaceships.
Some would call. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm deeply addicted. What can I tell you? Hopelessly an addict of RPGs and space games particularly. So I'm hooked on games like Skyrim and Witcher and Elite Dangerous. I'm waiting for Cyberpunk to come out. It's going to be an awesome game. But anyway, so I started gaming in the mid '80s, and Tetris and Halo and Super Mario Brothers and Diablo, Mortal Kombat, a lot of the games that pretty much everybody else has played. So, I played Wing Commander. I didn't know it was connected to Chris Roberts back in those days, the Price of Freedom, and I think it was Prophecy. And I got into Lance Casey's role pretty deeply at that time, I remember. I'm also a survivor of Eve. I played Eve for some time, and until it got exploited by some what I consider to be some very nasty metagamers. I won't talk about that in this interview, but Star Citizen is a unique forum. I love it. I've been on board, like I said, since 2016. I support it wholeheartely, and I'm not just in it for myself. I'm not just in it for my pirate org. I'm actually in it for everybody. This has got a huge potential to be a super game, and I want to do everything I can do to support it and have it be as fun and rewarding for all preferences, all players. So that's a little bit about me and my gaming history.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Our next guest, Lady Grace, all the way from Australia. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm actually a Kiwi living in Melbourne.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
So yeah, in terms of sort of my origins for gaming, my first computer game, it took me 3 goes to type it in correctly while getting the syntax right. So I started out with computer gaming in the days when you had computer magazines that included the game.
Yes.
And you put it on and you keyed it in.
Yes.
Yeah, so
the good old days.
Yeah, no, it was really fun trying to play Caterpillar when they brought out new computers.
There you go.
But yeah, anyway, so in terms of most of my gaming started out very traditional. I really enjoyed role-playing games. I loved the storytelling element and the social element that came with tabletop role-playing games. Then over time, that was a natural transition across to Ultima Online when that came through. So late last century, loved it, absolutely loved it. So over time, I've played different games. I love playing with a group of friends and actually exploring what the game has to offer, preferably in a free open world. And I really enjoyed Star Wars Galaxies. So beta tested that, played it, had a Jedi dancer, as you do. And also did a lot of work with the bioengineering and playing as a doctor in that game. And they were really, it was fun having all these synergies and having these social groups that came out of the gameplay.
Yes.
And the need for players to interact. The battle fatigue system in that game in particular created a real interface between social players and combat orientation, which was genius.
Black Rot, right?
Yeah. Anyway, so moving along, ever since that title closed, I too have played Eve, rather, mumble more than a decade. And yeah, at one point being an FC for Logistics Command in an Alliance battle group, we had some really fun battles. So yeah, it would be wrong to think that being a role-playing org means you're a Care Bear. You are allowed teeth, and some of us really have played high-level PvP, and no one knows exploited. But yeah, anyway, so long history of gaming, and really the thing about Star Citizen that really strongly appeals is the potential of this title. and the ability to try and push the genre forward. So it's not just a repeat of the stale old copy stamp that was coming out for a while. So yeah, really looking forward to what this has to offer.
That's awesome. Could you tell us a little bit about your org? You have a very unique org. You mentioned about the medical profession.
Well, we're the United Empire of Earth Medical Corp, so UEE MC. And our ticket in game is hospital. So the org, in a lot of ways, is really about trying to focus in on medical gameplay, and particularly the hospital aspects of that, with the view to maximizing both the realism and the fun.
Mm-hmm.
Because this game was originally pitched with a lot of realism, and we want to see that really come through in the game. And for this game to hit its potential, there's been a lot of talk over time about medical systems, starting from Death of a Spaceman, and then things like the information when the Endeavour Hope was introduced,
Mm-hmm.
other references to medical being a fully fleshed out profession in Star Citizen. We're a long way away from that at the moment. But within our organization, we have a lot of people who actually have real world experience,
Mm-hmm.
can actually bring to the table, if CIG ever cares to ask us, how to bring more realism through, while also being very much about gamers, knowing that you've got to have a balance between realism and fun,
Mm-hmm.
and understanding what that means for a combat player who is waiting to get back to combat because of those mechanics. So it's an interesting position there, where the thing we most want to do in the game is very much still in concept, which is a little surprising this far down the track.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, a lot of the systems as they're coming online have been so well done that there is real potential there. But yeah, so our real world backgrounds, our organization has a lot of people who are not medical, but it also includes people who actually are. Having come for a night shift last night in my hospital, yeah, I'm a bit tired, but yeah, I get it, what an ER should look like.
That's great. And how long has your org been in existence now in the game, roughly?
Pretty much since we're allowed to make orgs.
Okay. From the beginning. That's awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. And last but not least, Segellion. Tell us a little bit about you and your organization.
Hey Griffin, how's it going?
Doing good.
Lady Grace, I'm also an Ultima Online fan. Which server did you play on? Can she hear me?
Yeah, the Oceania one, but also I think for a while I trespassed on Great Lakes.
Oh, okay. I had a thief on Great Lakes. Yeah, so I played a lot of Ultima Online. I want to say like that's where I came from. That's like my roots. I started with Ultima 6 really, and then I worked backwards from there. I wasn't born in the 60s, so I wasn't cognizant enough to play Ultima 1. Played Ultima 6. That was a good game. And CR, he was involved with Ultima 5, if I'm not mistaken, and probably Ultima 4. You know, those Origin games, they were special titles. I used to think that Origin used to make the best games, really. They just had a special personality to them. You know what I mean?
Well, they introduced the whole role-playing thing to a different level, that we hadn't seen in games prior to that. Everything had been, how to translate from what we considered the board role-play into electronic format was a big deal when it happened back then. You're right.
Yeah. I mean, I'd argue like that was like the first sandbox games really, and they're just perfect for roleplay. Yeah, so I did a lot of that roleplay in UO. UO was really the nice place to do roleplay. Still is, by the way. I do sometimes I do UO streams on Twitch. Occasionally on the Saturdays, really, when I don't have to do trade. But, yeah.
So how did you get into Star Citizen? What brought you into that?
Well, I just feel like it's the natural progression. You go from these Origin games, and I remember it being 2012, and it seemed like the gaming industry was going kind of stagnant. And this was kind of light. Chris Roberts was a beacon of light, I suppose, in the project of his life, basically. So that was really exciting. So that's what I mean. Like I feel like they're my family members, and I follow anything that they would do. Never been disappointed.
That's great. and tell us a little bit about Altama.
Yeah. Well, that's a good question. That's a big question, really. I mean, Ultima is kind of like a brand structure, you know what I mean? Or like it's a society. Basically, it's like a community or whatever where people are free to exercise activities or doing things to leverage or in kind of like leveraging the Ultima brand, I suppose. It's more of a brand, right?
Okay.
And the thing is that, and I know we're going to talk about this a bit more, but like, it's really hard doing the org stuff in Star Citizen. And I feel what Lady Grace is saying about like doing the org thing and there's no mechanic available for it. I mean, Ultima is supposed to be a fueling company, but we don't actually have a fuel mechanic. So there are challenges created with that.
Right.
So, you know, because of that, I do what I do and I have a good time doing it and people come and people go. Right. And I just want to do whatever I can to make sure that they're successful in their ventures.
That's good. I know we met in 2018 in Austin, and you were one of the select groups that had an actual display set up for people who were attending CitizenCon. And you had quite a few people who came over and very intrigued with your setup in the sense of your display. You had uniforms, outfits, you had pins, and all types of great souvenirs there. And that's a certain level of dedication and commitment to, as you just mentioned, a game that isn't even fully fleshed out yet. So I admire the fact that you even are that much into it, that you feel that confident about the game. And I think your point that you just shared about how difficult it is to start going into these mechanics, even in piracy, Captain Kidd, I'm sure you'd agree that in theme, right, it's there. But the mechanics that you need to actually begin to utilize that particular area of role play isn't been plugged in yet. Same thing with Lady Grace. You know, it's great that we've got a medi-pin, but, you know, beyond dragging a body now, there's not a lot that's there just yet. And a lot of what I think all of you are committed to is something that is part of the dream still, and we haven't seen it come into fruition yet. So we're going to jump in and do something very quickly. Some of you know last week we made an announcement that one of our friends' mother's home had been destroyed in a basically like a tornado down in Florida. It was at the beginning of this month, and each week this month we're basically asking folks to give consideration to contributing to help their family in restoring their mother's home. She's a senior. Unfortunately, like many seniors who are in certain financial position, she had let her home insurance lapse, and unfortunately, of course, there was no coverage for it. So we just want to take a very quick look at that video very quickly. It'll point you to a GoFundMe page. It's not coming to us. If you feel inclined to give, feel free to do. For those of you who gave last week, there were a great group of you who gave last week. Thank you so much. If you didn't see the video, we want you to take a look at it. If you saw it, just bear with us. It's only about 1.5 minutes long. And then we're going to come back and dig more into talking about organization. So we'll be right back.
Right now, cleanup efforts are underway in Davie after some severe storms ravaged the area last night.
Local 10 Syra Onwar is live at the scene with how a mobile home community is coming together to help each other out. Syra.
So this weather really created a scary situation last night at this Davie mobile home park. But today the stress and fear lies in how are they going to clean this all up. Last night, Local 10 spoke with Rachel McHardy about the damage sustained to her mobile home after a passing of what the National Weather Service called downburst winds. Today, she's left with a mess.
Help, desperately.
What does a cleanup like this entail? What needs to be done?
Well, as far as the cleanup, the whole front inside is soaking wet. It's going to have to be demoed all the way down to the bare wood. Then you'll have to check the bare wood to see if it's any good. It needs to be replaced.
But kind neighbors like Marco Ramalati lending a hand with the cleanup.
Trees everywhere, mailboxes knocked down, and obviously this lady lost her roof.
But with damage this bad, they could use a hand from you.
I went and got her tarps. I have a ladder. What I'm asking for the public, please, anybody can come out here and help us put these tarps up.
So we are at Park City Estates in Davie. That's off of Southwest 83rd Terrace. You heard Marco earlier. If you're in the area, they could really use a hand. They've got some heavy tarps that they need help lifting, to help this woman who's already been through so much. Her mobile home's basically destroyed. So come out here and help. Again, Park City Estates. We're live in Davie. Syra Onwar, Local 10 News.
Okay. Well, again, thank you. The link will pop up. I'm sure fastcart, which he has already put it up. Thank you for the follow, TechnoSpoon. Take a look at that link when you guys get time. If you choose to donate, once again, we thank you and appreciate you. And we're going to change the channel back and go right back into role playing. Let's see. I'm going to start with Lady Grace. Lady Grace, first question for you is going to be, and this is, of course, from your perspective. What is role-playing to you in relation to Star Citizen, or role-playing in general? Let's just leave it there even.
I think for me, role-playing is really storytelling. So taking a story, choosing your part in it, like creating your character or allowing yourself to be the character. And without having any sort of too much definition around it, allowing the story to then be generated around it. So it's really creating the space for other people to tell stories and also to tell the story you want to tell. For my own part, I've done a decent amount of LARPing. I really enjoy that. And I've done a bit of writing in terms of actual literature fiction. So I think that the essence of it really is not going, I need to do I need to pick all of the following things to complete the mission. It's taking the time to enjoy the bits between the things you need to do. And yeah, just and giving other people the freedom to explore and to be their character to whatever extent they prefer. So I don't really put hard rules around what it is and isn't. I just strongly prefer that things that really don't belong, like real world topics in a role-playing setting. Same way as tabletop, you try not to have all the side chatter that's got nothing to do with the game.
Right.
Because it interrupts that space for other people to tell their stories.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Captain Kidd, I'll toss it to you now. For you, and this is your own definition. We're not looking for the Webster, just what you feel role-playing is.
No problem. I've got a little bit more of a philosophical approach. Yeah, for me, role-playing is about matching up facets of my inner character or my inner nature that I wouldn't normally access in my day-to-day life. And matching those dimensions of my character up with something in the outer reality, something in the genre of video games. So it's kind of a blending between me reaching inside of myself and discovering maybe facets of my character or personality that I have closeted away or maybe haven't really developed, and using the form of video games as a platform to be able to explore those and even to deepen them and broaden them for myself. So that's one thing.
Okay. So you can't be a swashbuckler in the boardroom, but you can be in the game, basically, right?
Well, I'm no slouch in the boardroom. I'm a leadership development expert, and I can kick ass.
Okay, fair enough.
But anyway, so also I think role playing for me is a very fun and creative process in which I can freely explore my depths, like I said, and also hone my skills. There are certain even in a gaming world, when I hone certain skills, those skills can be applied into my real world. If I really think about it, there are links and connections between my inner world of how I develop my own personality and character and how I apply myself in a video game. They kind of go back and forth for me. Okay. I do keep the line, though. I do know the difference between fantasy and reality, and that's really important.
Okay.
The other thing I want to say about role-playing, and I don't think many people maybe spend a lot of time thinking about this, but I certainly do, and it's not just complying with the roles that are made available by video game developers or those who pioneer new offerings, but it's also, in my experience, about crafting new dimensions and possibilities of what a role can actually be and what it can mature into. So, for example, when I started the Brotherhood of Libertalia in 2016, I jumped right in with CIG and got involved with them. I even got involved with Chris Roberts on what the real definition of piracy was. And we submitted gaming mechanics, suggestions. We did a piracy code. And I think for me, one of the biggest challenges of role playing is to stretch out and maybe step outside the box and be willing to actually craft what that role or what those roles can become. So, for example, in Star Citizen, pirates are not griefers. And what we're doing in our organization is crafting a new definition of what the meaning of piracy is and how we can kill the idea of griefers and pirates being the same thing. And that's really a challenge, and it's a role-playing challenge that both I and my gang are up for.
I think it's definitely a challenge, considering that people still haven't defined the difference between griefing and PvP. So you're absolutely right, trying to get that defined. And there are going to be people who may embrace a definition, and then there are going to be those who are going to be like, it's all subjective to them. So you've got a big task in front of you, but I admire you for being able to create something that's a bit more organized and has some form to it. Yes, Segellion, how about you? Role-playing, what does it mean to you?
I just want to say to Captain Kidd that I'm unable to distinguish between reality and virtual reality. Who wants to live in the real world anyway? Star Citizen is a much more sane place to be.
I can tell by your emblem there.
From my experience, the nature of roleplay exists as a framework of mechanisms for individuals to perform role-specific activities in a virtual environment. That's it. That's all there is to it.
Okay, that's pretty straightforward.
I understood some of those words.
Well, yeah, but it's a good point, and I think that people can tap into all this. I find it interesting when I listen to everyone's background and what they came out of. Particularly with Segellion and with Lady Grace, going back to the Ultima series of games. Lady Grace, I'll just speak for me, because I don't want to impose age anywhere, but I was back in those days with the PC Magazine when we used to have to type things in, and when there was just EGA and CGA and all that good stuff, right? Fastcart's raising his finger too, it looks like. So were you in there, Fastcart?
You remember that thick Copy magazine?
Computer Shopper, the big thick one, yeah.
I got that. I got that every month.
Absolutely. And I remember seeing how things transitioned. There's something, Captain Kidd, you said, I think you may have said a little bit to Lady Grace. I'm one of those people that came out of that period that when we did play games or role-playing games, there was this idea of exploring every facet and every possibility of those games. No one worried about in-game. Nobody worried about, I finished in 12 hours, right? I mean, you were proud to say I spent 200 hours in something and I'm still in there, right? That was a part of really immersing yourself into games back at that time, and it seems like it's kind of swung away from that. So hopefully Fastcart's going to get the next question for you guys, but hopefully we're going to talk about what may be the difficulties with role-playing in this day and age. So Fastcart, I'm going to pass it to you.
Okay, so how will your org incorporate role-playing in the Star Citizen universe? Let's start with Segellion this time.
I don't know because Fuel's not out. I don't even know what Fuel looks like. I got well, here's the thing. Let me just tell you, Fastcart, is that I advertise Ultima as a co-op, a fuel co-op. You know what fuel co-ops are? Have you heard of fuel co-ops before? Yeah, okay. So it's a fuel co-op. So it's owned by a whole bunch of people. So, I try and design roles for that. And if I see an individual... Sorry?
What kind of roles do you have so far?
What kind of roles do we have? Like Starfarer pilot, Starfarer communication officer, Starfarer engineer, gas operator, reactor control engineer. Cool. But I got to see people in these roles to see if they enjoy these roles. These might not be the right roles for them, right? So it's kind of my job to try and fit the right person for the right role. And Fuel doesn't exist yet, so soon TM.
So can I ask you this? Are you considering that your company would be a company that people who, we're finding out, I think you guys remember back in the day, CIG took a poll about what was the most popular thing that people wanted to do in Star Citizen, and it was not combat, it was exploration, right? There are a lot of people that you talk to who say, I don't mind being an engineer or being a doctor. Segellion, do you think that your org would be for example, if I'm into that type of stuff, that I could come to you and say, hey, we need somebody who's a really, 4-star, 5-star fuel guy. You know what I mean? Or will you contract people out to other people or orgs if they need that type of help? How do you, I guess when we ask how do you see it playing out in Star Citizen, I guess what service will you render or how do you incorporate into it so that people will want to call upon you? You know what I mean?
I hope so. I mean, that's basically what the whole booth thing is about, right? Meeting other orgs and building a network so that hopefully one day when fuel's available, they'll know who to come to.
Okay. Very cool.
Yeah.
Lady Grace, you've got a little bit of a tough one there because medical, and you have a theme, if I'm remembering correctly, on your page, and maybe you could tell me what that theme is. I'm not gonna quote it verbatim, but it says something along the lines of that you all will be willing to help anyone, whether good or bad, something like that. You know what phrase I'm talking about? The quote. She's laughing. Maybe that quote has changed. Maybe it's not the same quote anymore.
It will include fighters, but we will have a lot that we have to answer for.
Well, I think the quote, the one you mean, the intent is to create a network of safe to spawn on medical ships, which provide players with the confidence they've not just stepped into a trap. Unless, of course, you're wanted by the UEE.
Right.
Then you might have some explaining to do.
Okay.
But part of the concept really for our organization is creating a social space, but also trying to not be within a particular alliance where we're actually providing a UEE service. We're going to go where the fighting is with the deliberative intent of trying to ameliorate the suffering of sick and wounded in the field. So that's anyone who's human. Sorry, Trevarin. But yeah, so if you're a pirate, you're going to be able to spawn on our ships. If you're a criminal, you're still going to be able to spawn on our ships. And if you just attack the UEE, you're still going to be able to spawn on our ships. But so yeah, anyway, we do have a bit of a wild card because part of the problem with the concept of medical gameplay is we don't know how viable medical ships really will be and hospital ships will be, given that they're going to be NPC hospitals on planets. So there's going to be a very real cost to running medical ships in space. There's a real risk. Obviously, you can get shot down. And then you have, actual static hospitals on planets with everything, including shopping malls, respawns, all the good stuff. So that's an interesting thing in the design, but we don't care. We're going in anyway. And little things like if people want to go and attack the Vandal, part of our role-playing concept, we are part of the UEE. So if Chris Roberts sent us an order saying the UEE medical fleet is requested to provide immediate assistance to whatever, that's an order. We'd go. We have LTI for a reason because we expect losses. But in terms of getting out there and trying to enable other people to do the thing they want, which for a lot of people is pure combat. They don't want to have to mess around with the logistics of hospital ships. We love that sort of thing. So, focusing on the niche, focusing on trying to do what we do to an exceptional standard, but also to create a social space where people from different areas and different groups who might not otherwise meet can also share the same deck. Granted, you might have a few Marines standing there watching you going, yeah, don't try anything, the exit's over there. It is one of those things, we'll see how that goes, but the intent is absolutely there. And already, just in terms of how to frame it, pitching it and setting it up in the style of UEE also gives us some free wins in terms of, okay, how are we going to create the look and feel of it? We know we can pull off military because a bunch of us are ex-military. So in terms of military communications, military standards, even United States Navy organization for medical ships, we have people amongst our number who can speak to all those things. Myself, I'm ex-Army. So it's very, very possible for us to actually sell the role well, because we can draw on our individual life experiences to really make it look right. And again, we get those little challenges. Like, I'd rather love CIG to actually sell us in-game uniforms, like UEE uniforms, like dress uniforms. We're role players, guys.
Yeah.
Stop selling us more pink armor.
Fastcart, you're going to ask something?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So just to draw down the point exactly, you say that you'll provide services to anyone. Is that and no one is excluded in that?
You would have to do something to try and get excluded, because trying to maintain in and out lists is rather hard. So,
okay, good.
Just having a generic anyone can spawn here, that does mean that a big part of our organization will be politics. It will be trying to create effectively a red versus blue. So if we're going to have our medical ships deployed where there's a major conflict going on, having observers from both competing parties on the ship to make sure we're still providing services to both sides without favor, that's exactly the sort of thing that we expect will happen.
My specific example is doing Operation Pitchfork, supposed to take place at the end of beta, whenever that may be. There's going to be UEE or the players versus the Vandal trying to retake the Vega system. So, but the flip side of that is there actual are pro-Vandal role players out there who will side with the Vandals to fight against the UEE fleet. So my question is, like, will you provide services to the pro-Vandal players?
Honestly, yes. And
okay,
the only thing that I'd probably tee up out of character with them is, look, if you're respawning on a UEE medical ship, you can't be role-playing as a Vandal at that point. That doesn't work. But you can all get on, say, a retaliator transport with drop pods in it. We'll fly you where you need to go. And then we'll pretend that that part didn't happen. Because we want to support gameplay. We want to support players making their own stories. And yeah, the whole idea of spawning 20 systems away and having to spend a lot of time coming back, not so fun.
That's great. I do have a question before we move on to Captain Kidd. And by the way, Crazy Tonk Guy, thank you for the raid, and Farley and Marshall Doctor, thank you guys for the follows. Segellion, I know completely how you will finance you, because anyone who hires you, they got to pay. I'm not worried about you. Captain Kidd, I know how you're going to make your money. I'm not worried about you. Lady Grace, I'm curious, will there be a fee when I spawn on your ship? How will you be supported financially providing this great service to the community?
We're going to make a big loss.
You did what? What'd you say?
Sorry.
We're going to make a big loss. We're going to have zero fee as our...
Really?
Oh, okay.
That's our ideal. And not going to lie, there are partner organizations. So will we be moving you wherever you want to go in the verse? No. Will we be giving you free starships? No. Will we be doing our best to save you and make sure you don't lose a life in the limited number of lives you have before Death of a Spaceman kicks in? Hell yes. We'll do everything we can. Will we come down and try and evacuate you off a planet that's been overrun by Vandal? Of course. Will we take losses? Yeah, inevitably. But in terms of funding all of that, well, it's not like we had to pay for half the ships we've got. I mean, we already paid for them.
Yeah. And I'm only asking because I could understand you may even draw those income sources from maybe agreements that you've made with other orgs, for example, who maybe get greater priority over the general thing that you do. I was just curious whether or not there would be like a, yeah, as soon as I'm getting up out of the bed, there's someone standing there saying, with their calculator, we had to put on this hybrid arm and put your eyeball back in, so it's going to cost you X, or whether or not it'll be just a matter of you're providing it. Someone actually wrote in comments here, like as if you were Doctors Without Borders, which is for me a great analogy of what you're doing. I think it also lends itself to why we shouldn't mess with you. I mean, you're actually rendering a great service to people, as you mentioned. If I got to spawn 10 systems or 3 systems away, the time saved by me being able to utilize your service could make the difference, in whatever my organization is doing in a particular area. So thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, as soon as Griffin asked that question, my immediate thought was, if it cost me an arm and a leg, do I get to choose which arm and which leg? By the way, Griffin, they're saying in chat that Lady Grace is a bit low.
Oh, she's a little low? Okay, I'll see if I can bring her up a little bit. Let's see.
So,
go ahead, Fastcart, I'm sorry.
Captain Kidd, how would your org incorporate role-playing in the Star Citizen universe?
Well, let me see how I can answer that.
He's been waiting 10 minutes for that.
He's been waiting all week for that. Love it.
We're going to engage in full-on piracy activity in the verse to maximize profits and fun. So, for example, we have a dozen what we call piracy dens for exploiting all the facets of outlaw fun. So we've got a group called the Black Angels, who are our raid and ambush experts, and there are fighter pilots and our front men and women to be able to execute on our raids. We have black markets, thieving, of course, fencing, stolen goods. We've got a smuggling den, and a variety of other nefarious options for low-life outlaws. So we've got everything already set up. All the dens are set up, and we've got officers in charge of each of those dens with co-officers and groups, and we've got plans for protocols, how to execute each of the different facets of these dens. Our org title refers to Libertalia, and Libertalia in, I can't remember, it's in Old Pirate or something, means liberty and freedom, right? Mm-hmm. But it's an actual 17th century piracy stronghold that was known to exist. And so we plan on establishing 2 Libertalia bases of operation for piracy. One of them is going to be mobile. We own a Kraken privateer, so we'll be manning and womaning that. And we also are going to have a fixed base, probably in Pyro or somewhere else. That's a clandestine, maybe asteroid-centered base or moon base. Mm-hmm. We're also well organized with a full complement of experienced officers and support teams. And like I said, we've got raid protocols already outlined, and we've practiced them. Plus, we have a profit-sharing plan for everybody in the org. This isn't about me. I'm not going to take all the profits. We actually share in the risks and the rewards together as a gang. Mm-hmm. And we have a compensation system for those who get wounded or damaged, in a way to maybe reinstate their ships or refurbish broken components or systems and things. So we've got all of that worked out.
Real quick about that specific part. Is that something similar to how they did in Eve, in different corporations in Eve, like if your ship get blown up or whatever, to compensate you?
Yeah. But there's also other games that endorse it. But it's really, we based it off of the 17th century pirate templates, where actually a pirate group on a ship was a family, and they took care of everybody. So if you lost an arm or a leg in a sword fight, you would get compensated for all future battles, even if you couldn't yield a sword. You could cook a meal, or you could guard the barrels of rum, or you could do something. And it was really a very supportive kind of environment. So instead of a group of cutthroats who would kill each other at any turn, it's really about a camaraderie, a working together, and having things really work for everybody as a collective. So like that.
Very cool.
But one of the biggest fun things, I think, is the actual scenarios that we've acted out. So when Jumptown was active back in 3.4, we executed a lot of our raid protocols. We had a blast. We had such a good time. When the Hammerhead first came out, we manned it with a bunch of other ships and had battles, and we took control of Jumptown for a while, and then lost control, and back and forth. So we've got this approach that we developed through the actual gameplay called skill. So another way we're going to incorporate role-playing is by defining specific protocols that are relevant to piracy and pirating. So skill, S-K-I-L-L, pertains to the S, which means to stun our targets first. So for example, let's say Segellion and Lady Grace, let's say that you had met up in the verse, and Segellion, you were going to provide fuel or some kind of support supplies for Lady Grace's med ships. So what we'd do is we'd wait for you to meet up, and we would have already tracked you. We would have scanned you. We would have known what your capabilities are, what your liabilities are, what your normal routes are, what your executional plans are. So we do all our homework in advance, and then we'd stun your ships using our MPGs, either maybe Warlocks or other EMP equipped ships. The K in skill is we'd kill your crew only if you tried to attack us. So what's different about the Piracy Brotherhood of Libertalia is rather than just KOSing, we do not kill on sight. We warn first, we raise a Jolly Roger flag, we warn our targets, we let them know what the consequences are. If they attack us, then we'll kill them, or if they run away, then we'll also come after them. But we'll always warn first, and that's, I think, a crucial distinction about what our piracy org is about. The I in the skill, so we've got stun, we've got kill. The I is to inform you of our demands. So we'll scan your ships, but we'll never take everything on your ships. We will negotiate a portion of your cargo, not all of it, because if we wind up being greedy, we get a negative reputation, already a bad reputation for piracy. But for us, it's about taking a fair share and really working the strategy and the negotiation facets of the role play and the gaming. So we will inform you of what our demands are, and you will comply with them. The L in skill is that we will loot your ship of maybe precious medical supplies, fuel, possibly equipment and components that we might need for our future raids. But we'll only raid and loot your ship depending on your attitude and on our attitude. So rather than taking the badass approach of slaying everybody in sight and destroying ships and taking everything, we're very discerning about our piracy, and we do it based on what we get back from you as targets and marks. The last L in skill is we'll leave your crew alive. Okay. And any casualties that get incurred during our raid or our execution of our raid with both of your organizations, we want to let you know that what we do is we will offer assistance to take those wounded to a base, a port of call, or a medical facility, and we'll help in the transport of getting those wounded to a place where they can get taken care of. So it's a little different than just being a Blackbeard cutthroat. We actually have what I call wicked nobility in our group.
Okay, I'm going to, Lady Grace, if you may, I'm going to use my psychic powers all the way in the States, and I'm going to read Lady Grace's mind in Australia, and I'm going to tell you exactly what she was thinking. She's thinking, you have too many letters in that word. If you aren't working by that second letter, we're going to blow you out of the sky. That's at least, I think that's what she was saying. I'm teasing, but I know Lady Grace and her group, she has made it very clear that they're not just nurses sitting out on a ship. They're going to have their own protection out there waiting for such things. So maybe by the time you get to that third letter, you might be being fired upon. Is that what, Lady Grace, was that what your face was kind of saying a little bit back there, or would I read you wrong?
I was kind of thinking, there were two parts to what I was thinking. One is distress call. Two, huge shields.
And I'm teasing about it. I love the fact that you've given that much thought to it, because that is a part of role play, right? And again, we don't know what the response will be. You know, and so I want to come down to Segellion. Here's a question for you, Segellion, because you kind of alluded to this a little bit with the difficulty of how role-playing hasn't been completely mapped out in Star Citizen yet, or not role-playing, but our careers. Are there any difficulties right now with you sustaining an org? What are the difficulties of kind of keeping it going when you have a role-playing themed org? I know we have the normal personality stuff and all that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about what keeps the people interested while you are waiting on these mechanics.
Well, like I say, people come and they go. That's kind of the nature of Star Citizen. I accept that. You know, it's a social organization. It's a co-op. It's a fuel co-op. So I really try and run it like that. People come in with these crazy ideas, and I help them with those ideas, and they grow, they develop. If they take Altama a couple steps further in their travels, then that's a cool thing. But I don't do much any more than that, you know?
But that's great. I mean, you do cultivate and develop it even while you're waiting on those mechanics to come in, right? Even I know there's a lot we don't know that's in concrete, but it sounds like you are laying some type of groundwork. And like you mentioned about the roles earlier, you've started working on something as simple as that, just because we know how ships are made. You know that they're going to need certain positions and roles on ships, right?
Yeah, and I try and, like, RP is a huge part of my activities in this game. That's why, you know, I do what I do. But you know, and I had this conversation with Chris actually, in that the way to a sustainable future in Star Citizen is through roleplay, the community developed content, and you know, I take that from Ultima, what I learned in Ultima. So I want to take everything from that and apply it to this. So if I can just kind of help other people out, and we do our own thing, but I always try to enforce the rules. No matter what happens, all the shenanigans we get involved with, I always try and have RP as the basis and the foundation. But I'll tell you one thing: when Fuel's out in game, man, I'm gonna go hard into it. Like, I'm not gonna hold back. That's for sure.
Very cool. Very cool. Lady Grace, what about you? Are there things that you guys do to kind of keep the momentum going while you're waiting for these mechanics to start getting developed out?
To be honest, a lot of us are more focused on the real world, because a lot of the medical gameplay is a long way out. I wish it wasn't. I wish we had a more up-to-date design that was being openly discussed and invited for input, but we just don't know. We know what the old designs were. We know what was discussed. We know that there's art for artificial limbs, but we really just don't know. So currently we haven't been trying to recruit large numbers at all, because it's just not, it's too soon to drive recruitment for a medical org. But in terms of officers, people with real world medical experience, people who've got an Endeavour Hope, who want to be part of our organization, we're not going to turn them away. But a lot of that is really holding the idea for the future and staying available and keeping medical gameplay as distinct as simply combat medic on the table, because we want more than just being a combat medic. We have plenty of people who are going to love doing that. We've got some ideas around that ourselves for our members, but in terms of the wider picture, it's little things like, can we please have an Avenger ambulance variant? They made the original two-seater version. They designed the cockpit. It's got the right space for it. Perfect ambulance. Even if it's just like a lower grade bed than the Red has, no respawn. It just keeps somebody alive while you haul them back. Why not? So, you know, just continuing to feedback the ideas. And yeah, there are real challenges there we're so distant, but that's also part of why we haven't tried to recruit large numbers, because the gameplay just isn't there yet for medical.
Okay.
But yeah, we still have fun in the game. We still explore our ships, and I can't wait for Retaliators to actually get rudders and ailerons.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
Captain Kidd, for you, piracy, it's talked about so much in game. What do you do to keep your folks going? Like right now, we can't do the mechanics of piracy, right? And we can't just run around and say "har" all the time. Pardon the bad joke. So, what is it that you guys are doing to keep? Do you do social events together? What do you do to keep things going for your org until it gets kicked in?
Kind of ditto on what Lady Grace said. The mechanics are definitely not in for piracy, and we're waiting on even stability with the game. As a tester in with PTU, I've tested all the way back from 2.6, and probably around 3.4 was the most stable and the most fun for all of us. So we haven't done any large group gaming for some time, because basically we can't get in together, or it takes 2 hours to just get in the same port of call, let alone begin to initiate a mission. So what we've done is we spend our time exploring the different piracy weaknesses of capital ships, of fighter ships, where we can breach hull, how we can breach hulls, what the protocols are, how we're going to do tracking, a lot of research gathering in terms of trade routes and understanding things like mining, things like where the big fuel supply processing plants are going to be. So a lot of reconnaissance and exploration of charting out what the most profitable piracy hit points are going to be. So we spend time doing that. We socialize together, but honestly, a lot of the group is offline. They're with their families. They're playing other games. I'm playing Witcher 3 more than I am captaining my own ship. But I stay involved every day. I keep nurturing and supporting the organization, doing what I can to be able to educate new incoming outlaws on what piracy is, at least from our perspective. Not that we have the corner on it. We don't think we know the real answer to piracy, but certainly there's education going on. There's training, getting people equipped on dual stick setups, getting away from mouse and keyboard so that there's more options, researching things like voice attack and how it can be used in conjunction with dual sticks or HOTAS setups. So a lot of the gear, we do a lot of gear conversations, a lot of also charting out where the main supplies are, where the cargo, what best cargo, drugs and missions and things like that. So that's really what we spend our time on until hopefully 4.0, or maybe a little bit beyond, when we get more stability and some of these piracy mechanics that we submitted to CIG over 2 years ago will start coming to fruition, and then we'll start cashing in.
Okay. Well,
random question.
Sure.
Random question. So, Segellion and Captain Kidd mentioned they both personally talked to Chris. Lady Grace, have you talked to anyone in CIG about the medical roleplay?
I've communicated via the forums. One of my good friends is a pharmacist and actually designed a medical system that would actually use medications and active states to mimic real-world medications in a game setting. Unfortunately, he never got a reply back. So, it's very much one of those things. We remain available to chat with them, but I think being on the other side of the planet makes it a lot harder. You can't go to a concierge event here and just say hi to the top designers. They're literally on the other side of the planet. So that's a bit of a challenge. The other one is I simply don't know where medical gameplay is yet. It's entirely possible that they want to get the combat, like the front end of combat, right first. So yeah, they might simply not be ready to have those conversations yet.
You know, Lady Grace, we just had a conversation on Astropub show yesterday, and the question was about what is the best way to get information or suggestion or ideas to CIG. And you mentioned Spectrum, and everyone that we've talked to has always said Spectrum is the way to go. What I would suggest, and for any of you, is squeaky wheel gets the grease. There are some aspects of the gameplay that people aren't even thinking about, like medical, where you guys can lend a tremendous amount of, real world professional, but also the fact that you're gamers. And I truly would encourage you to continue to beat the drum, continue to put things out there, because CIG does pay attention. Because we don't hear from them does not mean that they don't see it. They really do go out and look at the forums. I know I put out some stuff when the whole thing came up about, the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 bed thing, all that stuff. I wrote up a whole long thing about it. Haven't heard back, but please stay with it, because there are a lot of us who think that medical, I'm a big person on all the medical ships. I want to be able to use them, and I can't wait to see what that mechanic is going to be like. So definitely, please continue to ring the bell with that, because they may be listening more than we know. Were you gonna say something, Fastcart?
And also, I know everyone here knows that for people who viewing may not know, but even if you do make a suggestion, you may not see results of it until like a year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that does happen, absolutely. I think Fastcart froze up on us. No. All right. I'm going to preclude this next question, and this is a tough one, and I'm actually putting this out to chat as well. When we talk about role play, as you saw, my name is GriffinGamingRPG. That's because I love role playing. So I'm on the side of these people, but these questions I'm going to ask are going to be some real hard questions. This one is not on the list that you guys read, because it's the precursor to the questions that you saw, and here it is. In role-playing games, let's use Dungeons and Dragons, for example, right? In Dungeons and Dragons, there are rules, and no one can just come in and play Dungeons and Dragons and do what they want to do, right? If you're playing Dungeons and Dragons, you have to play by the rules. And because those guardrails are there, everyone has to, in some way or other, become immersive and adopt themselves to some role in the game. Beyond just being a career, right? I'm not talking about just being a thief. You have to act like a thief, right? How do you see in Star Citizen that happening in a way? Because someone has mentioned this in chat already. I think you might agree that the majority of the people who are going to play Star Citizen, even though it's called an MMORPG, they're MMOing, they're not RPGing. So my question becomes, how will you be able to gain enjoyment when maybe 50%, 60, maybe 80% of the people who play the game could care less about RPG? What they want to do is go in and do a career. They want to go in and be a fighter, or they want to explore, but RPG is not what they're thinking about. Will you sustain it through your organization? In other words, as long as my org is doing it, we're fine. Is it a matter of, if I know other orgs that are doing it, we'll partner with them? How do you see yourself? And we're just going to kind of combine this positive and negative. What is the negative side to role-playing in Star Citizen, and what do you see the positive side? So, Segellion, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Okay, cool. Also, I do want to take a second and shout out Media Flare. If you guys don't know Media Flare, he's the leader of Star Citizen roleplay org. So
great.
he should really be sitting here in my place right now. Because I don't know, I've been to a couple of his events and they're pretty sweet.
Awesome.
And one thing I got to mention about the roleplay in Star Citizen, just off of firsthand experience, is like if the tech's broken, you really can't. It's a challenge to have community developed storylines.
Mm-hmm.
So. And we learned that as well at the Daymar Rally. We tried to have a roleplay stream for the Daymar Rally. And it's like, a sandworm came and killed everybody. It's like we have to invent these story arcs to explain things. Anyways, it doesn't matter, but challenges that we have. Anyways, to answer your question, you got 3 questions roped into one here, which is kind of unfair, but that's okay. I won't
No. Take whichever ones you want to take. That's why I precluded it. I wanted to lay down this whole thing about role play before you start answering the questions. That's all I was trying to do. You can pick whichever way you want to answer it.
Okay. Well, I would say that the game systems are probably going to be I support the automation of role play. I think that you can automate role play, the acting, the behavior, all of it through game mechanics, and I think that's what they'll execute with Star Citizen. I've seen this in person when I see pew PvP people or whatever. they adopt a character because they just have a play style, right? They have to interface with the game through a certain behavior or a set of behaviors. And through this, it acts as a mechanism. It's like manipulating them, changing their personality into who they are in the virtual world. So I think you get the game system in there doing that, and you also got to have this adoption by like our own psyche almost to be in this environment. It affects our brain. So I think it'll happen naturally. I'm not worried about it. I'm just going to create systems make Ultima a great place and adhere to all the rules of a co-op. And I think it'll be happy. I don't think there's any negative sides to roleplay. I think that it's the best way to have a long-term sustainable game environment.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you. Lady Grace, do you see any negatives to being able to do roleplay in Star Citizen's universe? And what are the positives you see to doing it in the universe?
For me, I look at the mechanics and I think we're missing things here still. So in terms of social gameplay mechanics, for a long time, I thought we were going to go more down a path like Star Wars Galaxies, where there were genuinely social careers and social professions. Social seems to have become a synonym for org management tools and group finder. So I hope CIG move away from that and start putting in truly social roles. So it remains to be seen just how much sand there is in the sandbox, essentially. But I think part of the challenge with role-playing is if you set your expectations that everybody in the world is going to be playing a script and they're all going to be actors all of the time, then you're setting yourself up for an unrealistic expectation. I completely agree that if the systems are there, so if players who are economically focused want to make money and they're undocking their hull C and trading goods to make money, they are in the role, whether they intend to be or not. So the mechanics can strongly support functional role-playing. But it really comes down to how do you set what you want to do. For example, we'll promote military communications because they're incredibly efficient. So we'll just start using them when it's appropriate. And that will drive behaviors because there is no more efficient way to do this. And other people will probably join us simply because this is how we do things. It works well. It works extremely well if you're working with other veteran organizations. So yeah, that's the sort of one where role-playing can essentially grow from necessity. But yeah, I think part of the beauty of the verse is that we don't know what the final form will be. We don't know what people will be able to do. And I don't want to put too many sort of limitations around that because we might be quite surprised by some of the creativity of players. Equally, there's a huge risk that there'll be a large block of players who simply want to win at all costs, and their definition of win is to stop other people playing. And unfortunately, we've seen that in some other MMOs where there are a significant number of players who they see winning as stopping other people who are different to them from playing.
Right.
But that's not a challenge I have to solve. That's a challenge CIG has to solve. And it's not going to be unique to this game. It's not new.
Right.
It's well known in the industry. So that will be a very real challenge, but a challenge to the entire project. So again, that's one of those great unknowns. We'll see how they deal with that.
Okay, thank you. Captain Kidd, thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of concur with what Lady Grace is saying. Those who want to stop others from doing what brings them joy or fun, I think is a bigger challenge than whether people stay in a role-playing scenario or not. For us as pirates, it really doesn't matter all that much. For us, we're happy to pillage a brothel or a monastery. So We'll take them both. But we're going to do it with good sportsmanship. And this is, I think, above everything else, I think the biggest challenge is how to encourage and maintain good sportsmanship in Star Citizen, because it's such a vast genre, and there will be game mechanics, and they're going to be much tighter even than they are now. And we're actually glad that they are, because flying under the radar is going to be one of the biggest challenges for piracy organizations. Is how do you work around these mechanics that have been put in? But it's not about stopping other players or causing them grief. It's about playing in a way that we can win, but not at the expense of somebody else losing. Now that may be a panacea, and a lot of, and I had some big disagreements with the Outlaw organization when I first came in 2016. There's some people even in your orgs that I've had some dealings with, and I'm fairly steadfast about having piracy be recognized as a viable gameplay option for Star Citizen. I think it's essential to have risk in this game, but not the kind of risk that punishes everybody and griefs them over and over and over again. So for me, the biggest challenge is going to be how to navigate supporting the outlaw community in maturing their approach to, at least for those who see that a real PvP game and MMO, it really needs to work for everybody in order for it to work for anybody in particular. I guess if you're an ass at it, doesn't matter. You'll do whatever you want to do. And there are those who do and will. But for us, the role-playing restrictions or the challenges are really secondary to us dealing with this issue of how to bring a respectable name to the role-playing of piracy.
Okay, awesome. Uber Nerd, thank you so much for the raid. We had a wonderful 100 and some odd plus people, 137 people drop in. Welcome everybody to the Soul Citizens, and we are talking about role-playing in Star Citizen. We have three wonderful guests. We have Segellion, we have Lady Grace, and we have Captain Kidd. I want to reflect back to something that you mentioned, Lady Grace, earlier. You mentioned about Star Wars Galaxies. I was a big Star Wars Galaxies player. I cried when Star Wars Galaxies died. I mean, it destroyed me. I was in it from when it started all the way till they did the big update where they reduced us from 33 careers down to 6, and at that point, I was done, right? Star Wars Galaxies, and I agree with you. I kind of equate or hope there are things about Star Citizen that I kind of wish we see translate that way. But Star Wars Galaxies had one advantage. The advantage was that there was a universe that was created that most of us understood, grew up with, and knew about. And we entered into that universe with a tremendous amount of anticipation. We wanted to meet Han Solo. You know what I mean? We wanted to go to Jabba's palace. Those were things that in some ways brought us into an immersive space of wanting to be in the quote-unquote Star Wars universe. Star Citizen, though it has lore, many of its players don't know a lot of that lore, and that backdrop is not there for everyone. What some people see as a space sim, what some people say is an MMORPG. Do you think that Star Citizen can build itself the same way? Because in Galaxies, sure, you had people that were doing crazy things, but people were, to me, it felt like people were in Galaxies because of the movies, the books, everything. That what drew them. Do you think that the community could have that same level of interaction that we had in Star Wars Galaxies? Because I still feel Star Wars Galaxy had that edge, maybe more than Star Citizen does. And anybody can answer that. I don't want to put Lady Grace on the platform, but she mentioned it twice, and when she said Star Wars Galaxies, that hit my heart. So if anyone wants to comment about that, feel free.
I can say something really quick.
Yeah, go ahead, Segellion.
Star Wars, the thing that made Star Wars Galaxies a success was the fidelity of Ultima Online. That's all.
Explain.
It's got like the crafting, and it's got the the dancing and the musicianship, just this nonsense crap in it that's perfect for role playing. And again, it's the role playing element that mechanisms around that make an enjoyable experience, an unforgettable experience.
Right. But to Lady Grace's point, Star Wars Galaxies was the first game that I ever played where people would pick up a career, like what most gamers would consider careers that they could care less about. Like, for example, there were people who stayed in the cantina freaking all day long. They didn't care about flying a ship. They didn't care about anything else. There were people who did medicine, and that's all they did. I mean, that was a unique thing to see in a game. I remember one guy, we used to contract him to make our uniforms. He'd make 200 uniforms from my org, and that's all he did was produce clothing. And so I guess what I'm saying is, I've never seen a game do that before. And I, even though we do have careers in Star Citizen, I'm just curious. To me, that was something that made people hang in there with that game. Even when it was broken, people loved it.
It was unique. It was unique, and I don't think Star Citizen can match it. But that doesn't mean Star Citizen isn't going to be something incredible within its own right. I think subsumption and the advancements in technology and the way that the finance system is
the economics with the quanta.
That's going to change. It's going to change a lot. It's going to add a lot of dimensions. So the absolute magic of what you're talking about can't be reproduced specifically, but I think it's going to come about in these other venues and forms for Star Citizen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alrighty, if I may.
Sure.
I think, just talking back to your point, Star Citizen had Star Wars Galaxies had a lot of people try the game because of the name. The people stayed because of the gameplay and the system. And one of the genius elements in that game, to my mind, was the battle fatigue system. So over time, you accumulated non-repairable damage that you had to step away from combat to do anything about.
Right.
You had to see a doctor to get rid of your health and stamina black bars. And you had to go and watch an entertainer to get rid of your mental pull damage. So that forced combat players, after an extended period of combat, to stop and go and seek out social players.
Right.
And to give genuine value to those social professions. I think one of the critical mistakes that's overlooked in Star Wars Galaxies sort of game evolution was they changed that from a post-combat activity that joined combat characters who had a story to tell to people who inherently wanted to listen to those stories. So how did you get those wounds? Was the classic opening line in a cantina.
Right.
If you've seen a bit of action, what have you been up to?
Right.
There were lots of openings there for people from very different playgroups to actually talk to each other. And somebody who had completely black bars really did have a story to tell. They'd been up to some mischief. Anyway, so it brought those two groups together after there was a story to tell. Unfortunately, what they did later was they changed it to buffing.
Yeah.
So if you wanted to do ground PvP, you needed to get a buff from a doctor and you
Right.
needed to get a buff from an entertainer to be competitive in PvP. So then it became a time sink chore when you did not have a story to share. It just became a chore to get the buffs to be competitive. So people didn't want to have to go and find somebody like that. So botting became
Bots
a thing.
became the thing, right? Yep.
Because everybody needed to be buffed. If you wanted to go to a fight and you wanted to win, you needed the buff. So bots were everywhere. Every little town had a set of bots going. And that was it. The game was in trouble because it no longer had those two different groups coming together to form the social heart of the game. Star Citizen currently has no equivalent in the design that I can see of a battle fatigue system. And yet it's uniquely positioned to be able to have such a thing, both because they have really great designers, they have the depth and the talent to be able to do whatever they want. But they also have actual sci-fi movie references for it. You think back to when Ripley's in the virtual forest waiting for her hearing in one of the movies. Like that's dealing with the battle fatigue, if sort of parallel of what she's been through. they also have like the Olympic class, which is going to have farms. They could very easily just have gardens.
Mm-hmm.
So part of their systems could actually be that after a certain point, your character has so much fatigue that they need to go to a canteen. They need to have a drink.
Mm-hmm.
They need to go and watch some dances, or they need to go and walk in the garden. And they can create all of those different options within their verse and have a mechanism whereby combat characters, once they have a story to tell, can go and visit the people who don't want to go anywhere near combat and interact in the same way. So Star Citizen can create the stages upon which people can act and upon which role-playing can happen, and where role players can draw in combat players. Or not, and you just click respawn, and then we've got Lemming Fest. So it remains to be seen when that goes.
Okay, you mentioned no problem. You mentioned battle fatigue. Star Citizen doesn't seem to have that per se yet, but they do have like food you require to eat every so often and drink every so often. And Star Citizen has that temperature differences, like if you get too cold or too hot, your character's affected. So it may not have like combat fatigue per se, but it does have certain roleplay elements in it that are specific to Star Citizen. How do you feel about that?
I think one of the things that is likely to happen in this game is a morale value. Not calling it battle fatigue, but actually just calling it morale is what I call it. And the reason why Star Citizen actually needs one is because you need a number where your NPC crew want to mutiny or want to get off at the next port. And so with food and provisioning your ship, it shouldn't just be, I buy enough of that, they're always happy. They've got all these mini games in the design. They've got air hockey tables, they've got vending machines.
Right.
They're going to be NPC crew. If you don't keep your crew happy, you should have a problem. It shouldn't be an onerous task, but that really suggests that there'd be a hidden stat from morale or equivalent. And if all players had a morale or equivalent, you achieve something, you win the battle, your morale goes up, no problem. You lose repeatedly, at some point, you should be taken out of the fight. Because, especially with the current mechanic design for respawning, there is a real possibility that people will just wave spawn, which is not what they want. You know, from Death of the Spaceman, it's obviously not what they want for their game. But in terms of preserving the integrity of the universe, having a system that forces you to step back rather than just click respawn over and over again until you overwhelm your opponent. It's something for them to consider in the design. We'll see where it goes.
Segellion, if you don't mind me asking you, I was thinking about, you were mentioning earlier about the co-op and being able to provide those services to people in the game. Will your org also secure the raw resources to be able to produce, for example, fuel? Or is that something that you would look to contract from someone else, where someone else does the mining aspect, and then you either purchase it or strike a deal with them? How would you role play that aspect of it?
It's funny how you look at this. You know, I mentioned before to Captain Kidd that I have a hard time distinguishing between the real world and the virtual world, because like all the things that you just asked me, I'm doing, but I'm not doing it from a role play perspective. United Earth Mining Corporation, I'm trying to get in bed with them as much as possible. I've talked with a number of their members. I'm going to have Tessa D on my podcast next week, or this Friday.
Nice.
So like, obviously I'm trying to extend relationships as much as possible. I don't like mining. Do you like mining?
I love mining.
You guys
personally.
like mining?
I love mining.
I can't stand it. I think it's great. So like, I don't want to do mining.
Yeah, I just didn't know if mining was a branch of your company or whether it's just something that you would contract out. That's what I was kind of curious about.
Well, it's a co-op. So if someone comes here and they're saying, you know what, I'd love to lead your mining ventures, I would say, okay, no problem.
Cool. Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
There's some partnerships there. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Totally.
Awesome. And Captain Kidd, I'm going to hit you with the last question for tonight. I know that without getting into too much of the weeds, you've spent a lot of time defining your pirate code. distinguishing the difference between piracy, PvP, griefing, mercenaries. You've gone through this great list of things that are there. Right now, as you know, that they've introduced the prison system, the law system, and I'm sure your group is definitely looking forward to the pyro system, which brings you into a different space of gameplay, right?
That's right.
How do you see, you mentioned earlier about having both this twofold thing, a mobile aspect of your group, as well as obviously a secret or hidden base where you guys would operate from. Yeah. There's going to be also competition for you in the aspects of NPCs. To Lady Grace's point, I was just thinking about in my head, Lady Grace, I actually have photos of what the cantinas used to look like in their heyday. And they were so many people in there, you couldn't even read the names of the people that were there. We go in Star Citizen's bars and it's empty, right? So my question becomes, when NPCs become a greater factor in this, have you started thinking about, because they've talked about how NPCs may come after you because of your reputation, and we are outnumbered by NPCs 9-1 in the game. How have you started thinking about that logistically? If you're going to set up a base somewhere, are you going to be able to pick up and move, for example, if things get too hot in a sector for you? What are you thinking about for that?
Planning on having 2 bases of operation, one mobile and the other fixed. So we can cycle back and forth. If one gets too hot, then we can put more of our resources and our staffing in the other, and then vice versa. So it's really about piracy. To me, is about adaptation, flexibility, flying under the radar, watching the ebb and flow of the game, the trade routes. So it's really a dynamic challenge for us. And I don't have all the answers right now, but I certainly have surrounded myself with the right outlaws, because the people in TPBL are pretty well experienced gamers, and they know the ins and outs of raiding and combat and strategy. So we're looking forward to the challenges. I don't know exactly how we're going to deal with NPCs. I actually have an axe to grind with CIG about the piracy NPCs. I don't think they're representing piracy correctly. I think it's adding to the problem. So with respect to NPCs, I don't know what's going to happen, but I do know that Subsumption is going to handle some of the automated challenges. But I also think just thinking on our feet and adapting and being flexible is going to be the best solution for us. So other than that, I really don't know how to answer your question.
Okay, no, that was a good answer. I don't want you to give away any secrets either, so that's fine.
No way.
And I don't want you to give away any secrets. Well, listen.
Real quick, I'm going to ask them. So where's your fixed base going to be?
It's going to be in the coil, and we'll be right next to the big meteor system, so you can come here and just ransack our ass.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the last question I want to ask each of you is, and I really do appreciate, again, we appreciate you guys coming on the show. I appreciate the fact that you guys have given so much thought to this game. For those of us who've been around any length of time, some of us have been around just a couple of years, some of us have been around from the very beginning. And I appreciate the fact that you guys have seemingly thought out very well what it is you want to do and what you want your organizations to do. Have you, and this is a sidebar question, have you thought about, when we look at the star map, is there any places that you are interested in operating out of? Or right now, are you just kind of waiting and see how things lay out? Have you already looked at the star map and said, hey, this is where we want to base out of? Or are you saying, nah, we aren't that far down the road? Segellion, I'll start with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Because I designed it initially out of lore. Like I read as much of the lore as I could and tried to figure out, because I'm trying to make Altama into a millennial corporation, because I have such a passion towards the co-op corporation structure, and I want to believe that it could last 1,000 years. So I try to do it around that, say, okay, it's from Earth, and it took all of these other systems along the way. But right now, I'm focusing on Crusader because that's where I've been playing Star Citizen for the past 3 years. So once Fuel's in game, I'll have a better understanding on the operations within Crusader, but Crusader is a priority. And once I think Crusader is available, I'll probably start writing some articles about that and get it up on some news sites about saying how Altama is moving into the Crusader system, and check out the new services that are provided, and et cetera, et cetera.
Okay, good. Thank you. Lady Grace?
The natural home for UEE Navy is really Idris. In terms of where we will probably do a lot of playing and dying, I wouldn't be at all surprised if it's Vega or one of the other red systems, because there are inevitably going to be people who are going to want to go there. And we're going to go, yeah, all right.
Okay.
Sounds fun.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Captain Kidd.
Well, I think for short-term gratification purposes, Pyro is going to be the hot spot for us interimly. We'll also hang out around the jump point. You'll see us mostly where the lucrative trade routes are. So watch for us. We'll be the ones with Jolly Roger with the smiling skull. So
okay. Well, we've got one question, and fastcart's going to ask you guys a question too. We do have a question from the chat, and it's: do you think CIG needs to implement specific things for role players, or would that not be needed because role players can just integrate virtually in any environment regardless? In other words, do they need to do something very deliberate for you, or are you pretty much saying that if they just do the mechanics, that's sufficient?
And that was from Shiver, by the way.
For me, the mechanics are sufficient. The rest is really a creative process.
Lady Grace, pretty much the same thing?
For me, you can always make do with what you've got as a role player. But to be the best damn space sim ever, it has to have better support for role players than Star Wars Galaxy.
Okay. Segellion.
I just want to say these just because of my own experience. This is how roleplay fails in Star Citizen, is that we need persistence and we need stability of the servers. We need those two things. Server meshing would be good. Let's get 200 plus people per server, and then we'll be okay to roleplay.
I think we'll be okay to play, period, if we can if we can get that in. Fastcart, was there anything? You said you had a question you wanted to ask?
Yes. So my question is, it's like, so the difference between different MMOs, you can have a theme park MMO or you can have a sandbox MMO. Like EVE Online and Star Citizen particularly going to be sandbox MMO. Final Fantasy 14 is a theme park MMO. So what are the challenges or differences in having a role-play group or a guild between those two types of MMOs? Segellion, you want to take that one first?
I don't know. Can I pass and wait to come around again? Because I've never played any
Sure.
other game. I played Ultima Flight Simulator and Star. I don't know about any of those other things.
Yeah, we can come back around. No problem.
Okay. So who wants to take that?
Well, they're different. They're different challenges, obviously. I mean, one has got more restrictions and more guidelines and mechanics backing it up. The other is more open, where you can throw sand in somebody's face and get away with it. Mostly. So, I don't know. I think the challenges are different, and I like playing both, actually. I like to have the diversity because it challenges me, and it challenges different. I want to go back to my philosophical conversation about role-playing, that I think it accesses something inside of us that we don't normally access in our day-to-day lives, and it's a venue. It's a portal into a part of our character and personality that we don't normally access. And I think it makes it very special for that reason. So these two different venues, I think, are different ways of accessing those characteristics and kind of hidden talents and skills that exist in all of us who are gamers.
Okay. Lady Grace, any comment?
For my part, the theme parks are typically very poor for role-playing because there's an expected way to achieve a puzzle. If you're in a raid in World of Warcraft, if you don't cast the right spell at the right time, like Mass Disenchant or whatever, you'll lose. You can't convince the dragon to be on your side. You can't negotiate your way around. There's no actual role-playing in the tabletop sense of the term. Because the outcome is predetermined. You succeed or you fail. Sometimes you can skip some content, but it is a linear pathway. You're on a ride. You succeed or you fail. And it makes me a little nervous that Star Citizen has a lot of hero quest giver chains now. It's becoming quite theme parky in that way. You do X, then you do Y. You get to talk to the NPC who gives you a linear set of quests. You succeed or you fail, and it's like, oh, I'm not so sure I like that. True sandboxes, you get given ideally a huge amount of stuff, and then you make your own fun with your friends. And there is no overt win-lose condition. You know when you get it wrong because you're all dead, or your city burns to the ground. You lost. But so there's often clear loss conditions, but in terms of the win condition, that tends to be more about, are we still having fun? So Star Citizen is at an interesting point because they have introduced hero mission givers. You can actually do quest chains, and for a lot of players, they'll really love that because they're used to the scripted storytelling style. So I'm not against those. I'm just really waiting to see what Star Citizen do in terms of freeform. Where are the tools? Where are the missions? Where there is no set outcome. There's like 5 different branches. Pick which one you want. So we'll see. Hopefully over time, that sort of maturity in gaming will come through. Same way that Dungeons and Dragons itself developed huge amount of depth over time. So, yeah.
Captain Kit says he's preferred both, but do you have a preference between sandbox or theme park, Lady Grace?
Theme parks after a hard day work. Sandbox is for years of fun with my friends.
Okay, awesome.
Did you get enough time, Segellion, or you want to change your answer?
No, I have no idea. I'm learning this. I'm glad that Uber Nerd said that description about theme park game genre. I never heard of a theme park game genre. I didn't know that. So, yeah. Learned
like
something
World
new
of
today.
Warcraft and stuff like that.
Yeah, World of Warcraft. I never role played in World of Warcraft before. What's the RP scene like there? Is it same?
Well, that's a whole nother story.
And Witcher 3, that's a whole nother story too.
Yeah, Witcher 3. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, listen, we want to take this time now to say thank you to all of our guests. Segellion, would you please once again tell us the name of your org and where people can find out about you?
Yeah, Altama Energy is the name of the org. Definitely hiring people. We're looking for anybody who wants to be a part of something innovative. Check us out. I stream Monday to Friday, 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. on Twitch, so that's a good way to reach me. I also have Discord and website Altama.energy. Yeah.
So the name of your show?
Well, I did my daily stream in the mornings, and that's just my channel. But the Night Crew is kind of a Twitch group that I'm a part of, and we're a group of content creators. And I like to interview celebrities every week or people within the community. Had Operation Pitchfork once. That was pretty cool. So yeah, check that out, Night Crew.
All right, Lady Grace.
UEE Medical Corp. Pretty much just on the forums and Spectrum. We have a Discord, but real world is sort of happening more than anything else. It's very much watch this space for the future. The main one is when medical issues come up in terms of gameplay design. You'll see us come out of the woodwork then.
Awesome. And last but not least, Captain Kidd.
Sure. The Piracy Brotherhood of Libertalia, TPBL. You can find us on the RSI org webpage, and also we have a Discord channel, and the RSA page has the link. So anyone who's interested in up-leveling piracy and giving it a viable and credible name in Star Citizen, come on in and join us. The water is dark and fun.
That's awesome. But do you play Sea of Thieves, Captain Kidd?
Oh, yeah.
You do? Okay, great. Good. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Yeah. Fastcart, you got anything closing for us before we head out?
I made it through the whole show. Made it through the whole show without making an odd joke.
That's true. You did. This a rare thing for you. I'm proud of you today. I really am.
Oh, thank you very much. That means so much to me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So again, to all of our guests, we really appreciate you guys making the time to be here with us tonight. I do have one last special announcement before we leave. One of our soul citizens, Seer the Sixth, got married yesterday, so we want to wish him a very, very great congratulations. He's gotten married and he's out somewhere. We don't know where he is. We don't know when he'll be back, but Seer, we want to say congratulations to you. You guys know Seer the Sixth. He puts out great videos. Yep. And definitely is one of our team members. So we just want to wish him the very best as he's taking advantage of hopefully his honeymoon week. Hopefully he's not all tied up with anything. Well, I shouldn't say tied up, should I? That's not a good thing to say. What are you going to say, Fastcart? Yeah.
I wonder if she is partner know how much he's spent in Star Citizen.
Oh, yeah. Well, we'll have to give him that later. Yeah, I'm sure she'll find out eventually. Well, anyway, listen, folks, we really want to say thank you again for being in here. Uber Nerd, again, thank you so much for what you did tonight. We really appreciate it, and all the folks who came over and hung out with us. And, of course, our people who are here every week, we really appreciate you, too. So we are going to now do a raid, and I think what we're going to do, you know what, we're going to send the love over to, let's do Sergeant Tickles. We will hook up Sergeant Tickles. You guys know him. He's a Star Citizen streamer. Really, really cool guy. But he's doing Golf It right now. So I don't know. Let's see. Maybe I want to do it to somebody with Star Citizen. Let's send them to, like Captain Burke really needs to raid. But we'll do it tonight for him just to set it up for him. So anyway, thank you guys again for coming. We really appreciate you all. Appreciate you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much. And audience, we thank you guys. Take care of yourself. Be safe. Stay healthy. And as always, peace, love, and soul. We'll see you guys later.
That was fun. GG.